think Furina can ever be truly nerfed. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Recently, I made a video talking about how Hoyoverse intends to nerf Furina. However, despite their best efforts of lunar reactions, I think that in the long run, Furina is a character that basically just could not be nerfed. So I thought we should look at this from a wider perspective. Because I think that genuinely, when you look at the entire spectrum of Genshin Impact's existence, I don't think that Furina is going to be truly nerfable going into the future. They are going to have to do so much in order to truly get rid of her. They are trying with lunar reactions. I can see that. And right now they are still unsuccessful because Lady Furina still ends up being an absolutely fantastic slot-in multiple Not Cry teams. And shoot, if you have a Neffa, then Flynn's, Furina, Sucrose, and Neffa is actually going to be quite a viable team. But of course, there's a particular character that's going to be replacing her in these situations, which I imagine is going to be Columbina, because she is the Archon equivalent of Not Cry. Alright, that sucks. There's a character that's going to replace her there. So does that mean that Furina's completely cooked? I just don't think so, because I very much believe that Columbina is going to be a more niche unit. I personally think that she's definitely going to work with Not Cry characters specifically, especially whenever you consider that moon abilities are very much a self-contained thing, and they mostly exist within the context of Not Cry itself. So whenever you consider that, I don't really think that we're going to be getting a ton of lunar reaction characters after Not Cry has already passed. So with that in mind, I think going into the future, we are most certainly going to see Furina rise back to the top again. She still pretty much is the best unit that you can pull for at the minute. I just expect people to see her value decrease a little bit in the next upcoming versions whenever we eventually get Columbina. But trust me, it's really not going to take long for her to come back again. Because I think that Hoyo realized a mistake they made with our dearest Hydro Archon. Think about it. I personally think that Hoyoverse feels like they made a mistake with our dearest Hydro Archon. Now, I personally think she is absolute perfection, but of course I do. Objectively speaking, I want you to consider all of the older Archons. Basically, all of them fell off. Nahida has recently regained some value, yes, and she's definitely been one of the more well-off Archons, but at least compared to most of the old cast, Furina absolutely annihilates them in terms of meta value. I will die on the hill that Venti is a decent unit and not a completely bad one, but that's the thing, he is still only just okay at best. Zhongli is comfort pull of all time, you just don't really get him outside of comfort circumstances. Raiden Shogun fell off ages ago, and I will die on this hill. She has not been good for a very long time now, not just recently, not just after Veressa. She has always been a disappointing character, ever since like 4.0, I would say. Really not that good. And then we have Nahida, who has kind of survived here and there, but after the Sumeru meta, her relevancy definitely wasn't as high anymore. Then cue Lady Furina, who is still a relevant character to this day. Hoyoverse basically can't do anything about this. No matter what, Hydro is likely just always going to be the best element in the game, because it's always going to enable the widest number of reactions and enable the most interesting stuff. I just can't see anything else being the case. And the literal only way that they were able to figure things out was to push to the limits and make characters that just don't really want damage bonus percent. And even then they can still use our dearest Hydro Archon in their teams. Hoyoverse literally has to go out of their way in order to make Furina a less relevant unit. And even that isn't gonna work. And even whenever we do get all of these Not Cry characters, you have to consider that Furina is still going to be good, in fact, best in slot, for such a wide plethora of teams. She is going to be amazing for literally every other type of team. And whenever you consider that, she's just going to remain as being this absolutely busted universal pull that basically everybody should be making. On basically every website that records how many people pulled this character, Furina is literally always the most consistently high-owned unit. Basically everybody who has seen one of her banners has her for one reason or another. Naturally, of course, but you get the idea. All around, there just isn't really any way that Hoyoverse is going to be able to nerf her going into the long run, unless they do a couple of things. I don't think lunar reactions are really going to be enough. We have already established that Hoyo is trying to do it, but are they going to succeed? They literally just can't. So many fundamental meta things would have to change in order to facilitate Furina no longer being a top tier pull. With all of the other characters, it was pretty natural. They all had very easy counters to exploit. Venti's, you just had to make sure there were enemies that couldn't be grouped as easily. Zhongli, well, you don't really have to nerf him, he's just kind of a comfort pick. The nerf is that you're losing out on damage. Raiden, she was a DPS that was fantastic for her time, but damage numbers go up. eventually she was naturally going to get Powercrept anyway. And then the heat as obvious restriction is that, while she definitely does have some other niche cases that you can use her in, she was at least intended to be used in those Sumeru Dendro teams, which once again would eventually fall off. So with those in mind, every Archon had a natural inbuilt counter, and I assume that Hoyoverse thought Furina's inbuilt thing would be the HP loss mechanics. I don't know if they realized how much of a tool that ended up being to her in the end, because it's honestly something that propelled her value even higher. Because being able to provide these mechanics has enabled every possible DPS to use 4-piece mayonnaise hunters. So if Hoyoverse really wants to get rid of her, lunar reactions just aren't gonna be enough. Sure, I do think that we're gonna see her take a backseat for a year, but that doesn't suddenly mean that all of her meta relevance is going to disappear overnight if she still has so many good teams that she can work in. Yes, I do expect her to not be best in slot in not cry teams after Columbina, but I feel like basically everyone was expecting that. Now, we do also have Moika, who's currently a really busted Archon. What do I think about that? I do think Hoyoverse absolutely tuned up her numbers to the absolute max and made her the absolute strongest thing possible, so that she could really feel like a DPS Archon and stay strong for a relevant amount of time. Do I think that she's always going to feel that strong? Eventually damage numbers are going to catch up, and that's the thing. That is just what comes with the territory of making a DPS Archon. Furina, by design, is just inherently very future-proof. I don't think there is any other character that you can consider to be more future-proof. She is so well equipped for the future. Hydro, amazing buffs, amazing constellations, everything here is amazing. The entire package is fantastic. A couple of lunar reaction teams aren't really going to change that. I do think that we're likely to get a lunar reaction team for basically every element, and then we're likely to move on. I don't think that they're going to be carrying this on to Snezhnaya. We're probably going to see some other new gimmick there. So what could they do in Snezhnaya in order to counter her? Well, I obviously don't want to give Hoyoverse any ideas, but let's genuinely think about this for a moment, because I feel like they already did what they could in Not Cry by making characters that really don't want regular damage bonus % buffs. But if there was anything else they could do, well, it's a little hard to think about, to be honest. They'd have to maybe make Hydro application useless. That's just not happening. They'd have to make damage bonus % completely useless like they did with Lunar Reactions, but we saw how that panned out. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Or they'd have to inhibit her HP loss mechanic somehow, though that would then cause a chain reaction where other HP loss characters would suffer for it. Though we don't have that many of those in the game right now, so I suppose it would be fine. It would be a balanced enough nerf, but there is literally nothing that they can directly do in order to nerf their dearest Hydro Archon, because yeah, she is pretty much just inherently busted as is. What makes me so confident that this is going to be the case? Well, I think that going forward, after the whole Lunar Reactions thing, you're gonna have Columbina for those teams, and then going forward, any traditional DPS that's gonna want Hydro application and damage bonus, they're probably gonna want Furina. Now, there is one other thing they could do that would actually make her less relevant, simply by nature of her no longer being as demanded, and that would be Melt teams becoming the new main meta. For example, this actually did end up making Sitlali a very strong unit, because she is very good with Moika, and she is very good with a majority of the Pyro DPS cast. So that's another way that you could easily think about it. They could just make a reaction relevant that Furina doesn't really pertain to. And when you consider that we're going to the nation of Cryo next, I don't actually think that that's that far-fetched. Like, yeah, that kinda makes sense to me. They could very easily focus on Melt. However, my personal copium, I think that Freeze's time is soon to return. Okay, maybe that is ridiculously cope, but I just can't help but feel like we're gonna see a mix of cryo reactions come back. I don't think that it's just gonna be one or the other, because I believe that they're gonna try and focus on a whole lot of them. So in that case, she is still going to end up being relevant. Might I remind you that Skirkaroni is the second best DPS in the game right now, and she uses Lady Furina in her best in slot teams. There is simply just no winning for Hoyoverse. No matter what they do, this character is always going to be relevant. They are trying to nerf her, they are failing, and in the future, I also think they are going to continue to fail. There is such a little amount of things that they can genuinely do and put in place to make the character less relevant. I'd say they should just take the W. Every single Furina banner is going to do quite well for them, so I don't really see the problem for you, Hoyoverse. If she's still doing well, she's still doing well. Maybe I'm a little biased because I, of course, love our dearest Hydro Archon, but I just don't really see her falling off anytime soon. Well, anytime soon, yes, I do genuinely think that she is probably going to lose some meta value. And that is why I am emphasizing that this is something for the long run, for the future. And it's also kind of the basis of this video, because yes, I do think that she is going to lose some value and not cry over time. But even so, I just think that going into the future will be okay. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why I personally think that Furina just cannot be nerfed. This has been Juice, signing out, and it's only natural that perfection cannot be topped.